University is starting back soon, so many of my friends started moving back to town. I am 17 female, live in a house with 5 friends. I wasn't born in the UK but moved here with my parents when I was 17. We come from another European country, so I speak my native language, English, which is far from perfect. I've been learning Spanish and English since I was little, and my Spanish is better than my English. I don't have an obvious accent in English, people just assume that I am Canadian. We had a small party on Saturday and one friend brought his new girlfriend, Jess. Jess 20, and she's the reason why I am posting here. Jess made sure to let everyone know that she's a polyglot and speaks multiple languages. I was obviously impressed. I study modern languages, meaning that I'm learning Italian and German on top of Spanish. And obviously I asked what languages she speaks: Spanish, Japanese, Arabic, my native language, German, Korean, and French. I told her how impressed I was and carried on with my evening. I had a short phone call with my mom, whom I obviously speak to in my native tongue, and I went out of the house to talk to her. Jess was out in the garden and heard my conversation, and she corrected me on my pronunciation. I told her that she was in the wrong and she insisted that she knows better. I didn't fancy getting into any arguments, so I ignored her and went back inside saying whatever. Later, I bumped my head and swore loudly in Spanish. I tend to code switch a lot when drunk, and she corrected my pronunciation, which was funny because it was her who was incorrect. I ignored her again. A while later I wanted my friend, who is from Spain, to hand me something, but I forgot how it's called in English. So I said, "Hand me Spanish word, please," knowing my friend would understand. Jess decided to correct me again, using completely incorrect word. My friend and I looked at each other, and me being drunk, I lost any self-control I had. I spoke to Jess in Spanish asking her what the hell she thinks she's doing. And she looked at me telling me that my Spanish was so wrong that she didn't understand a word. It wasn't, but okay. So I told her the same thing in my native tongue, to which she replied with the same thing. I laughed at her and told her it's my native language and she really shouldn't lie about being a polyglot and correcting people when she doesn't actually speak those languages. She was fuming. She tried to grab her boyfriend's hand and leave with him, but he was too drunk to care and just said, "Told you to stop lying." I don't know how she got my number, but she called me this morning screaming what an asshole I am to humiliate her like that, and if she knew I spoke the language, she wouldn't have corrected me. I do feel bad now. I realize how humiliating this must have been for her, but on the other hand, she shouldn't have been lying. Me and Diamara, she is 12 years old, have had a rough summer. She's been more defiant than usual. I've been dating her mom Mara for 2 years now. 9 months ago, they moved in with me, Maple. Both Dio and Mara have an on-again / off-again relationship with Dio's dad, Dionysus. He's pretty much never paid child support, comes and goes as he pleases into Dio's life. Typical shitty-ass part-time dad. I've tried to fill the dad role in her life, while still understanding boundaries, taking things slow, etc. This summer Dionysus decides he wants to be a real dad and takes Dio in for a month. Good for him, not my business, and Mara agrees. When Dio came back home because school started, she was a lot different. Really mean to me, very dismissive. A few days ago she got caught shoplifting at the mall. Security took her in, then called Mara, who didn't answer, then called Dionysus, who didn't answer, and finally me. I answered. They told me I had to pick her up or she'll be handed over to juvenile. I didn't say anything to her while I picked her up. I apologized to security, apologized to the store. I even tipped the security guards plus the store employees because it's up, they had to deal with that. I assured them Dio would be punished appropriately. I'm speaking to her in a strong, affirmative voice while we're in the car. Not yelling, but in a fatherly tone, I suppose. I'm telling her how up it is to steal, and how I don't. With thieves, and how I absolutely don't voluntarily. With any kind of police, so I don't appreciate any of this, nor will I accept it in my house. She snaps back that I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell her what to do. From now on, if I want to tell her something, I need to clear it with her real father first. That killed my soul. For the past year or so, I've treated her as my own daughter. I've paid for their housing, I've paid for her mom's car, her schooling, her food, everything. Her bio dad dropped $100 check off one time in the past year. In check bounced, so I had to call him up and he brought cash over. I told Mara about all of this. She was appalled at what Dio said, but she never made Dio apologize because she's not wrong, you're not her dad. A couple of days later, Dio asks me for some money to pay for her uniform / accessories she needs for a sport she's involved in. I say, go ask your dad. She scoffs and says her dad doesn't have the money for it, so I have to pay for it. I tell her, I'm not her dad, so don't ever tell me what I have to pay for. She cried to Mara, who tells me I'm not being an adult about the situation. Mind you, I never received an apology or a thanks for our entire previous situation. Mara says Dio is a kid and I need to stop acting like a kid too. Now both of my kids, 16-year-old son and 9-year-old daughter, and my ex are extremely mad at me because I won't give up my appointed time with them. My son won't even talk to me and my daughter is crying all the time. Me and my ex divorced shortly after my daughter was born. I blame him for it and he blames me. I won't go into detail here. We ended up with a 50/50 custody agreement, switching every other week. While this was 8 years ago, we're still not on good terms. We rarely ever talk to each other outside of the kids, and I'm perfectly fine with that. One thing we have agreed on since the beginning though is that we don't plan things on days that aren't ours. And unless it's extremely important, we don't switch days or weeks. In the 8 years since we've been divorced, I have never asked him to have the kids on a day that isn't mine, and I've never given him one of my days even if he begged. Well, last week my ex contacted me and told me the good news. His parents are hosting a week-long family reunion in the summer at Disneyland and he wants to take the kids. Well, the problem is that it's on one of my weeks. He asked me to let the kids stay with him that week or to switch a week with me, and I shot him down. It's my week with them and I get to spend it with them. I told him if it's so important to him to reschedule, but he claims his parents can't do that and this is the only week that the whole family can go, and he told me that I need to think of them. I told him tough luck and hung up on him. Well, this last Sunday when my ex dropped the kids off with me, my son refused to talk to me at all and my daughter wouldn't even look at me. When I asked my ex what was wrong, he refused to talk to me, only saying ask them in a snarky tone before leaving. When I asked my daughter what was wrong, she burst into tears and said that I was not letting daddy take them to Disneyland. Asking my son, who still refuses to talk to me. It turns out that my ex told them I was not letting them go to Disneyland with him. He's trying to paint me as the bad guy. I sat both of them down last night to talk to them and explain it's my week with them, but they refused to listen to me. My daughter just cried and my son told me I'm only doing this to get back at my ex. I think it's unfair for him to do this when his parents scheduled it during my time with them. I demanded an apology from my ex and him to set things straight, but he refuses, and his last text to me being, "Can't tell them the truth 'cause they already know it." I'm so pissed right now. I am 22 female, and I work full-time at a local steakhouse-style restaurant. There's a policy with the employees regarding free food based on the length of your shift, and the other day I was working a double, which meant I got 2 free meals, one at the end of my first shift and one at the end of my second. There are a few things we as employees can't pick for our free meals due to costs, but we still have access to nearly the entire menu. Another part of this policy is that if we pick something, and one of the ingredients required is almost gone, we're allowed to keep our pick and tell the customer that we're sold out of that particular item. This applies to all sides, salads, soups, etc. Usually though, if we say we're out, we really did run out regardless of employee meal picks. Anyways, on the day that I worked my double, we were about 2 hours out from closing and I sat a couple who were on a first date. Just assuming by some things they said, plus he name-dropped a popular dating app. When they were ready to order their meals, the girl just so happened to ask for sirloin. But that was the cut I chose for my second meal and we were down to our last one. I apologized and told her that we were out, and the pouted and told me she would need another minute to decide. Her date shot me a dirty look and told me he needed more time now, too, so I went to check on my other tables. They seemed to be having a good date, laughing a lot and smiling. But they were immediately quiet and standoffish every time I checked on them, and interrupted me with, "Just the check, please," while I was asking if they'd like any dessert. I brushed it off, as it's not the first time I've had a rude customer, and brought them their bill. He wrote a big 0 on the tip line and a little note that read, "Thanks for ruining my date. Hope your night sucks too." I told my coworkers during closing, who all agreed the guy was being an ass. But when I called up my dad the next day and the topic of work and those particular customers came up, he told me I should have been less selfish and just let the woman have the sirloin and that I should have picked something else. He told me they didn't handle it very well, but that young lady had probably been looking forward to that steak. You knew you could have given it to her and you didn't. I'm honestly a little disappointed in you. That really hurt my feelings and I've been wondering if I was actually in the wrong. I don't believe it was a money thing. The guy ordered a pretty expensive seafood dish and the girl had one of our pricier cocktails. The sirloin is not our cheapest steak option. Yes, I'm aware that it's a weird policy. But it's our policy and my bosses encourage employee satisfaction so that we can ensure customer satisfaction. I do not eat steak for free every day I work there. I have it once every 1 to 2 weeks.